My old toolbox over here on the right, very small. For a while I was able to live inside that, but recently I acquired this toolbox, which isn't the most expensive toolbox in the world, but suddenly I have 10 drawers. So all my tools which were overflowing now have a place to go. The question is how to organize them, and I wanted to show some of the things that I did that helped me in case they would help anybody else. So here's what I did. Here in the bottom shelf, I put all my air tools, and this used to be the box that it came in, but it didn't quite fit, and so I cut the box in half and made it all fit inside here. The good thing about this arrangement is I can take the pieces out and use them outside the shelf. I don't have to keep coming back to the shelf. I can take this to the workplace and get the tools out of it. So cutting the box that something came in and making it fit in the shelf was one of the things that I did. Another thing I did is, that's an empty one, purchase these socket trays at Harbor Freight. And they give you, in a box, they'll give you 3 different trays. They'll give you the 1/2-inch drive tray, the 3/8 drive tray, and the 1/4-inch drive tray. And then that gives you a place to put all your sockets. Once again, you can take it out and use it next to where you're working. And it also, you can immediately see what ones you're missing. Clearly I'm missing a deep well 16 and 20. And then I purchased, there's 2, they'll sell you a metric set and they'll sell you an English set. And so I have both of those there. Put the English ones, or the metric ones up front because those are the ones I use the most. And then the next shelf up, I did the same thing with my 3/8-inch drive. So this shelf is all 3/8, and the bottom shelf is all 1/2. Here's the 1/4-inch, and clearly a shortage of 1/4-inch tools, but I don't use them very much, so that's okay. This is still a work in progress, so the top end here has odds and ends tools that really don't fit in any categories. The top drawer has a bunch of junk, crescent wrenches, and odds and ends metric sockets. Need to categorize and do something with. Here I've got wrenches, vice grips, wrenches, pliers, and that one's probably going to stay just like that. Down here I have an empty one that's got some odds and ends metric wrenches. But this is the one that I wanted to talk some more about. And this one, I have the standard. You can buy a container like this at Harbor Freight that lets you organize things. It fits right in the drawer. And I've got all kinds of screwdrivers organized in there. But this is the one I really wanted to talk about, which is organizing these wrenches. Now, the wrenches, being skinny as they are, they don't, they're thin, so they don't take a lot of the depth of the drawer. And I noticed, I had all these wrenches sitting in the bottom of the drawer, and I had a drawer about this thick. And I could have put them in a thin drawer. I don't know, it seemed like the best thing to do would be to make a couple of trays for these wrenches to sit on. So this top tray right here is metric, and you can see that they're numbered. They're all metric, and they're actually stuck to the board by magnets. And then below that, I have all the standard ones. Now they're not stuck on with magnets, but they've got a mat and they hold on pretty well. So I'll talk to you a little bit about how I made these shelves. They're really easy to do, and they can make your toolbox a little more organized. So in a little more detail, here's how to make these trays that'll help you get a lot of wrenches in a very small space. Using just some melamine, which is just a cheap paneling. It's a 1/4-inch thick. I had scraps laying around, so I used it. The handles I made out of just standard household wiring. I used a hunk of the black, and I used black throughout so it all matched, but any one of those wires would have worked really well. And a pair of needle nose pliers to bend the handles to fit. So here's some of the details. So the most important thing about these is spacing. First of all, thinking about your vertical spacing, how deep is your drawer? In this case, in order to leave a little bit of room for the handle, I left a 1/4 inch underneath and created a little foot down here, so that it would space up high enough that when the handle folded underneath, there'd be room for it. Then how much room does the wrench need? I left 1 inch, and it's sitting on this pad. And then there's the next layer, and then your wrenches. So the whole thing is in, call it 2.5 inches. So a 2.5 inch drawer would be plenty of room for all of the wrenches in both trays. Looking at the bottom, you can see this is just a scrap of the melamine that I hot glued on here. Didn't nail it or anything. And then here's the house wiring that's just stuck through and bent over. I drilled 2 holes thinking that I would need to loop it back through. Turns out I didn't, so I didn't need that other hole. There's lots of ways to do these handles. You could use a bit of rope, you could use a tab. In this case, I opted for a handle that ran all the way across, thinking it would give me some front to back stability, being able to hold on to it. And then the board itself, the actual board itself, width and length, is quite a bit shorter than the inside diameter of the drawer. It turns out there's rivets and things inside the drawer, so you need to take those into account when you measure the actual size of the piece of wood you're working with. On the top one, I did the same thing. I have the holes with the handles. In this case, I needed enough space for the wrenches. Now, I spaced this in further than I really needed to here, and probably what would have been most efficient is if I had just made 4 legs, 1 on each corner, to support it, as opposed to a bar that ran all the way across like I did here. That would have let me not lose the 2 inches. See, I can only put wrenches, from here to the other side, so I lose 2 inches on this shelf. I was going to lose 1 inch anyway, and I could have gained back that inch. It's not a huge deal, but hindsight's 20/20 there. So once again, I just used a 1 inch square piece, moved it in 1 inch, and hot glued the thing on there. And then I went to work on the shell, on the attaching the wrenches. So cut your baseboard such that it doesn't catch on any of the rivets or things that are in there. Give it plenty of clearance. You're going to have to angle this thing a little to get it out anyway. A tight fit is going to be bad. You want it to be a little bit sloppy so you can get it in and out easy. After I had the boards cut, I had my handles attached, went ahead and added the legs, everything stacked nicely in the drawer. It was time to lay out the wrenches the way they ought to go. And I knew that I like these. This is drawer lining. You can get this drawer liner stuff at Lowe's or Home Depot. I think even Walmart has it. And I knew I wanted it, on the bottom part. It, gives it's a nice mat for it to be on. So I laid out the mat where I thought it should go, and then I laid out the wrenches on top of the mat, and then drew around the wrenches so I'd know where they were going to go. So you can see there's an outline of each one of the wrenches there. Then I went to Michael's, and they have these rare earth magnets. This one's a 1/2 inch in diameter, and I believe it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and they hold on real tight. There's probably 1.5 pounds of force on there. They hold the wrenches real well, and since they stick up a little bit, the mat sticks up a little bit, it all evens out, and they lay nicely on the mat. Once again, I can take this tray out, and wherever I'm laying under the car working, I can have my entire set of wrenches a hand's reach away, and grab it off of there. I can see which ones I'm missing, so that when it comes time to put the tools away, where's the 14? You'll notice I've got some duplication here. This particular 14 has a ratchet box, so I've got some duplication. And every now and then you get in a situation where you need a couple of 14s to torque against each other. So at the end of the day, you can, with just, in my case, some scrap wood, if you don't have the wood laying around, this melamine stuff is not very expensive, and you can have all your wrenches in a single drawer that you can pull the trays out and use along in your work site.